the Discount Property Investor Podcast. I am your host, David Dodge, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Matthew Chase from the Chase Law Firm PC. Matt has been my attorney for a couple years now, and he helps my rental management company whenever we have tenant issues. And I'm really happy to have Matt on the show today to talk to us about a number of different things, about evictions and moratoriums and the current law and what's happening out there right now. So I'm just really grateful for you to come out. Matt, you even came to me today. Thanks, man. Awesome. I like doing these live. It's always a good time. Always
I'd much
fun.
prefer to be in person, especially now when we're just unable to go so many places. It's still crazy. And, the federal government just extended the travel mask order till January of 2022. So folks expect it to continue till hell freezes over.
Wait. They just did what?
I read a blurb in the news, that these are executive orders. So they're not actual laws passed by Congress, but they have the force of law. That the Biden administration extended this travel mask ban, which is, I do that all the time. The travel mask ban is you gotta be masked up to go into an airport, a bus depot, on a bus, train, plane.
Until the end of 2022?
No, until January 2022 for
still
now.
Though, man.
But then expect January to come.
It's going to keep going.
There's going to be the Upsilon variant, the Iota variant, the green cheese variant.
The last variant's communism, basically, right?
We're already almost there.
Man.
But I don't want to go too far into the weeds. I was on a podcast earlier today, and I kind of went off on a crazy train tangent on the loss of our liberties. But I'll just say that this is all unprecedented. What's unprecedented is Americans we are the frog in the pot, and it's not being boiled slowly. We are being boiled fast.
Yeah, I know. Very fast right now. Everything's changing. It's crazy.
I mean, we are watching our liberties not erode. They're being yanked away from us, lock, stock, and barrel. And half of America is complacent. They're okay with mandates. I was downtown today after I went to Trevor's podcast, the Boiler Room. I went over to Stiefel Center. This is an opera house and small concert venue that people might not know about, and picking up some tickets for Dream Theater. For those, Dream Theater?
Yeah,
of course. So that's a fabulous band, and they have one window open. There is the 3-inch thick plexiglass or glass with a 1/4-inch little thing. It's like a bank where you can slide stuff through like this. And I dared to walk into this ginormous cavernous lobby. It's the lobby of next door to Stiefel Center is Scottrade, where the Blues play, the Blues Stadium. And I'm the only person in this ginormous lobby. And the guy said to me, "You have to wear a mask." I'm like, and I said to him, I was like, and he's wearing a mask in his box. He's in literally a room with the plexiglass and thing. There's virtually no air entry, and he's wearing a mask alone in there. And I was like, "Dude, are you serious? I'm serious about my health, and I don't want to die." I said, "So I'm not fighting with you. I mean, you really believe you're going to die if I don't have a mask on, fully vaccinated for 7 months? But it's okay. I don't want you to die. I'm going to go out to my car to make you feel better. I'm going to go get my mask." So I went, I got the surgical mask that I've had on and off, a couple dozen times. It still looks clean, but it's completely dirty, and it means nothing. And it's a minor thing. And my wife, who is a dentist and lives in a cloud of aerosol grossness at her work and understands disease spread where I don't. I have no training in this, but it's all silly.
Right. It is.
It's all silly, but we're willing to give up our liberty for a little bit of temporary safety. That's a paraphrase. We all know where that goes.
That's right.
We deserve neither, and we'll get neither.
So. I love it. Well, Matt, thank you for that. Matt, welcome to the show, my friend. I agree. I agree 100%, man. I do. So I have to admit, I own about 60 houses. You can see on my board up here, give or take. And we'll be at 100 hopefully by the end of the year.
And actually, you're doing a great job because I don't see many eviction cases from you.
So all I do is evictions. So what I was going to say is, I feel kind of bad, But at the same time, I'm really super fortunate to be able to get to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
Because
we don't do a lot of business because you don't have a lot of evictions.
That's what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And I have people on my team that handle it for me. So if there is an eviction, which happens from time to time,
Yeah, Megan's the one who can.
Yeah, you're helpful for sure. You know, but I'm not in it. So I'm really excited to kind of learn this process, right?
Okay.
So give me like a history though of how it used to be and how it's now.
Sure.
Just because there's a lot of people that may listen to this down the road that, you know, they need to see the big picture before we dive into what's happening today.
Let's talk about pre-COVID. So if I were talking to you as a potential new client who didn't know much, you just got into buying your first few properties, you got a slow paying tenant and you want to know how do things work in the state of Missouri. Maybe you're from another state and you're like, Matt, you know, I sent them a 30-day pay or quit notice and what do I do from here? So that always comes up. So my first thing I say to you is, listen, man, it's great or not great. You send them a 30-day notice. Now we got to wait till that 30-day notice is done. But in the state of Missouri, there is no pre-eviction notice requirement. It's unusual. State to state, every state is different. The laws are different.
I got to digest this a little bit. So there's no pre-eviction notice required. Yet you do these still?
No, I don't. I often get guys who come to me and say,
they want that.
And not that they want it. They're like, maybe they're from, New York or Illinois. And my understanding, and I don't want to say I'm speaking authoritative, my understanding in Illinois, I think it's a 3-day or a 5-day notice, but that notice must be served upon the tenant, personally handed to the tenant, or else you can't file a lawsuit for eviction. So if they successfully dodge the landlord and or his process servers for weeks and weeks and months, he never gets a lawsuit filed against him, which is insane.
Right.
But in general, and I'm not stating this as authoritative, but in general, the bluer the state, the more the law favors the tenants to the point of insanity. And some states,
where do we lie in there? Because
our laws,
so we're in Missouri, if you're not aware.
Yeah. So here in Missouri, the law generally, I have always said, favors until COVID. So this is all pre-COVID.
It favored the landlord.
Contract. No, it doesn't even favor
I like that. I really like that.
I believe.
So if you write in there that you quit paying your rent, then you have to be out or whatever.
As long as the contract doesn't violate state law. So
you can't
put in a contractual provision that says, if you're late on your rent, in 10 days, we can come in, lock you out, throw you on the street, turn off your
utility. That's not reasonable.
All of that.
It's got to be.
It's unconscionable.
Right.
It's illegal.
Right.
And all of those provisions of the lease would be stricken.
But as long as you're following the guidelines,
as long as you are. Now there's things.
Then that helps a ton. Right.
Right. So for example, in
Missouri,
that was then.
And it'll continue though.
Yeah. So that was then. And there's certain provisions that are, in some states, it's not permissible to have what's called a unilateral legal fees provision. So if you're my tenant, you sign a lease, and here in Missouri, they all say if tenant is late and landlord has to institute any kind of eviction proceedings, tenant has to reimburse landlord's reasonable legal fees and costs. But it's not bilateral.
It's not bilateral though, right?
Now, some states require you to have a prevailing party's legal fees provision, which means if I win, I get my legal fees from the tenant. But if you, the tenant, wins, you can get your legal fees paid by the landlord. Now,
we don't have that here.
We have no such requirement. Some states have a requirement, and unilateral is seen as unconscionable. State of Missouri, that's a negotiated term. Now,
so if we have in our lease that we would get the legal fees reimbursed,
and I believe your leases have it. I've said it
I
many
believe
times.
they do. We have a professional property manager. Yeah,
but a lot of
30 years.
But we get people who have two kinds of bad leases. One are people who print it off the internet.
It's a really good point, guys. If you're listening or watching and you are a landlord or you want to become one, listen very carefully to what he's about to say.
Yeah. So some of the terms that we want to have here in Missouri, again, please don't take this advice if you're in any other state in the union. Unilateral legal fees provision, an absolute must. It is enforceable. If it's not in there, we can't get legal fees. I do see some small landlords who just print it off the internet with a prevailing party's legal fees provision. And now that's a danger if we lose. Now, there's some times when there's problems, whatever, we rarely lose these suits. But if there's some significant counterclaims, maybe that landlord is kind of a slumlord and he brings up stuff and then the court awards some legal fees to him. It can happen. It's very, very rare, but you don't want to have that potential liability out there. Then we have the big, ginormous landlords who want to have one lease across, 37 states. Don't do that. Most of those big landlords have like one lease, but then they'll have Missouri provisions, Iowa provisions,
Got
New York
it.
provisions.
So they'll cut in the provisions that
Correct.
they need. Yeah, yeah.
You know, hire a lawyer who understands multi-state leases. And they tend to be like, I've got a guy here in town named Mark Jacob. I'll give him a plug. He's excellent. He's a friend of mine. He has been my real estate attorney. I don't write leases. I don't do such contract drafting, but he's a real estate lawyer, transactional, and he's great. And he has clients. Some are of mine. Some are ones that I don't handle the evictions on. And he does these multi-state leases. So that's something to be wary of. A jury trial waiver, an absolute must here in the state of Missouri. Okay. Now, certain types of evictions, if we do what's called an unlawful detainer, they can ask for a jury trial. You know, won't get much into that, but going back to what was it like before COVID? So I could say to you, Dave, listen, you're looking at filing the case with me, say on the 15th of January. Now, I always recommend if they're late on their rent, send it to the lawyer around the 15th of the month. That first month, they don't have to be 30 days late.
And that's what we do. We send it to you guys, and then I think sometimes, or go ahead. Yeah.
So pre-COVID, you could pretty much guarantee that in about 3.5 to 4.5 weeks is your first court date. Okay. In the state of Missouri.
So basically a month.
Basically a month for the first court date.
Give or take, right.
So the way I always frame it is, look, if say rent's $1,000, late fees $100, and legal's $300 for ease of math. January 15th, they owe you January and a late fee. You send it to me, we sue them $1,400 plus restitution of the premises. Say we're in court on the 10th of February. Now they owe $2,500. And Miss Smith sits down with me in court. Now, if she doesn't appear, we just get what's called a default judgment. 10 days later, we can file a sheriff's execution. And then about a week
so
later,
it's really nice when you do, this is then, of course.
This is then.
But it would be really nice when whenever me as the investor, files this and then they don't show. So that's kind of what you're hoping for. Yeah, but if they do come, is it change it a little differently?
If they come, most of the people who come do some sort of what's called a consent judgment. It's an agreement by consent. It's a payment plan. Okay. And some of them come to court saying, listen, I spoke to Dave Dodge and we wrote up an agreement, but dude, you failed to meet that agreement. That's why he sent it to me. Right. He gave you a chance. Yeah. Didn't send you to court till February 10th.
Let's review the agreement.
Right.
And what date does it say? What date is it now? What else do you want to say?
We don't get too deeply into it.
Okay, sure.
So we sit down with them. We say, okay, today it's February 10th. You owe $2,500. Oh, but wait, you sued me for only $1,400. Yes, but if you look at paragraph such and such, it says we entered February 1, February rent came due. February 5, the late fee came due. So now you owe $2,500. We could give you a 30-day payment plan. Does that work? Oh, I could give you $2,500 in 30 days. No. Ms. Smith. We're going to be in March. So we got to
I can give it to you in 30 days. No, absolutely not.
So what we're going to do is we're going to add in March. Now we're at $3,600. And they're like, and their eyes go wide. And they're like, I can't pay you $3,600. Hold on. How about $900 a week for 4 weeks starting next Friday? Boom, done. And they're like,
and they're like, next.
So when you frame it like that, you write it up, $900 a week for 4 weeks. Now, most of the people who sign these agreements, they
probably default though, right? If they're already there, because you're talking like 3 to 4% vacancy rate, right? Or not vacancy, but non-payment default type rate with our business. Yeah. So you're already taking out 95% of the good renters. So I would think that when they get there, they've already defaulted, right? So the odds of them defaulting again and it's maybe another 50-50 or maybe
it's hard to say.
Hopefully it's a low number.
Hopefully it's a low number, but
that's
the
a good
reality
point.
is
it's going to depend on your market.
The reality is it's easier. Look, we don't want trials because they're time consuming. We charge a little more for trial. And
people do trials I guess if they have nowhere to go.
Here's the thing.
I get it.
Pre-COVID and even now, generally, if I go to court on any given Thursday, I'm in St. Louis County Court. Right now I'm by WebEx. We'll get to that in a moment. But I go to St. Louis County Court with a stack of 80 cases.
I've seen you in there. I have gone to one or two.
So I go into court with this big stack of 80
no idea
files.
What's going on.
Nobody does. I think I know what's going on.
And it's like
the courts are always flabbergasted at me.
I do got to give you a shout out though, because you own it, bro. You go in there and know what you're doing. You're a professional.
Yeah.
You're a professional.
I'm also,
because everybody else in there's nervous and looking around, and you're just like,
well, some of the people are very nervous. Listen, they're being evicted. I've been there.
I was the landlord and I was nervous. Was this guy going to go crazy on me?
Tenants in court?
No, they've
Like,
never. They've always not showed.
So
I've only
there.
been 2 or 3 times.
No, but
though.
I'm saying
Yeah.
when I was a tenant years
Right.
ago,
Mhm.
I got into eviction court. I was living on Long Island. This is after college. Business went downhill that I had, and I got an eviction notice. I went to court. This is Suffolk County, Long Island, and I was terrified. I mean, I'm a young kid, you know, but I was old
Yeah.
enough to have a lease. I mean, I went to court, and,
Yeah, I mean,
and
you're
but
getting
by the
sued,
time I went to
essentially.
court, I brought some cash with me, and I made a deal with them. I don't remember exactly how it sorted out,
Sure.
but it got paid.
Right.
It happens. Listen, good people end up in this situation. It was the only time in my life I ended up
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely.
We've all had bad times in life, you know.
I get it. I totally get it.
You know, listen, I don't want to get too into the politics, but we got our first congressional district of Missouri here, Cori Bush. She's part of the squad. She sold herself on the fact that she is an evicted tenant. The fact is that, you know, I spoke to the attorney who filed the 3 evictions against her. She's basically one of our regular repeat customer defendants.
So she's going from house to house doing this.
I don't know if it was house to house or it was the same landlord.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it's possible, and I don't know this person like you do, or at least you know better because you're telling me about them, but it is possible that you could get into 3 shitty situations at the same time.
Absolutely.
You know, like
listen,
and we get it. Yeah.
Some people it happens. Some people are just terrible managing money.
Right.
But we'll get to that.
Right.
So we get to court here. I have 80 cases. Now, 15 of them have paid in full before Thursday. They paid in full. Maybe the moment they got served with the court papers, they went down to the landlord and paid. Some of them, they wait till the last minute before court. They paid. We always get a couple of dismissals the morning of court. So we get to court with 80 cases. 15 are dismissed. We're down to 65. I'd say 30 of them are going to come to court. 35 of them are going to be defaults. The default cases means they don't show to court. We get judgment. We win. 10 days later, that judgment is final, and we can ask for the sheriff, which is about a week-long process. Now, even the people who default, who don't show to court, many of them end up paying. They just blow off court. Maybe they're actually at work, or they're, you know, off on a street corner drunk. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If they pay, they don't get put out by the sheriff. The number of people put out by the
pay
sheriff.
how much though?
If they pay in full, we dismiss the case.
In full.
We file what's called a satisfaction of judgment.
Got it.
Okay. And we're talking about late payment, late rent evictions. We'll get to other kinds after, but the people who show up, maybe 1 or 2 of them are just kind of belligerent jackasses, or something weird is going. If they're belligerent, we just set it for trial, but it's a very, very small number. The people, maybe 1 or 2 others have a lawyer or whatever, something weird's going on. We work with them. A guy who's never been in the situation, who's been a good tenant otherwise, he's late on his rent because he just got diagnosed with cancer.
Stuff happens.
The landlords will all work with them. But the remainder of those 30 people, we're doing a deal. It might be a deal to vacate by the end of next month. Here's the dollar amount, good, done. It might be a deal to pay and stay. It might be a 30-day deal. My client may be willing to do a 60 or 90-day deal.
So basically there's an infinite amount of possibilities.
Yeah, and most work out.
Because it's people working with people most of the time.
Yes.
And if they don't show, then there are repercussions. You get within 10 or at 10 days.
At 10 days, we could file for the sheriff.
And we can have the sheriff come remove them from the property.
And they have multiple.
And here's the thing, guys, that's never the goal. Like, no. I don't ever want to have to evict somebody for one. And
you got to put it up on your board.
And two,
to clean it up.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is like literally to have a sheriff go there. Now, here's the deal. This is a business. This isn't a charity. So I don't have all of the houses that I have, and I know a lot of the other investors don't either, haven't paid in full. Like, we have a debt service every month on this. We have a mortgage payment. So if we're not getting the rent, we're still having to make that payment.
And the mortgage payment is just the small part of it, because you have to put on a roof here. You got to fix the HVAC.
Yeah, it's a long-term payment.
You get the copper stolen here, and it's all these things. You've got staff to pay for, et cetera, et cetera.
So 10 days, boom. Okay, cool. So that was pre.
That's pre.
Now what's happening now? How does it look in today's environment? And what is a moratorium?
Okay, so the word moratorium.
I know what it is, but
everybody now kind of knows.
Hey, I know what, but I want my audience to know, because there's people that are going to be listening and they're going to be like, Dave, what? They're like, all right, I know what an eviction is. You guys just talked about that. That's great.
The eviction moratorium is a cessation. It's a stopping of all evictions.
Okay, so this is something that the city, the government, county, who applies the moratorium? Is it state level?
So here in Missouri, there are no state level eviction moratoriums at all.
And there never has been?
Never has been.
Okay.
Many states, if you got people watching from states of, California, New York, the New York eviction moratorium was just, as my understanding, was knocked down by the United States Supreme Court as being, ridiculously overbroad. I'm not going to get into that. I don't know about the various state moratoriums.
What do we have here then?
Here in Missouri, we're dealing with the federal moratorium and its kind of effects on local law, as well as we have had shutdowns of the sheriff. So basically, sheriff execution moratorium.
So that division of this process was shut down at certain points.
Yeah.
So what's the federal? Because that's covering no matter if you're in Oklahoma
there's
City
two things
or
we're dealing with.
Okay.
There was the original CARES Act moratorium. It was specifically a 120-day moratorium from the date of the enactment of the CARES Act. This is going back to late March of 2020. It expired.
So that's 18 months ago, basically.
It expired July 28th or 9th of 2020. By some calculations, people added on 30 days. Let's call it end August.
Okay. Of 2020.
29 August 2020.
So that's a month ago, basically.
A year.
More than.
I mean,
a year. Yeah, a year ago. Yeah,
1 year ago, the CARES Act expired. Now, it's interesting. Just before, when I was out in the hall, I was talking with a nationwide multifamily client who's being told by Fannie and Freddie. Now, keep in mind
that what?
Everybody who has a mortgage, almost every mortgage in America is Fannie Freddie backed.
Sure.
Fannie Freddie, unelected officials, bureaucrats who don't make law, they are telling borrowers that the CARES Act still applies, because the CARES Act has a provision in it that talks about notice, that there might be a 30-day notice requirement before filing an eviction for late rent, but it is all part of the 120-day eviction moratorium, which expired in the summer of 2020.
Okay.
That is over.
Okay.
Now, some people are going to say to me, I'm giving out bad legal advice. I could be opening up people to liability. Fact is that there's not even a notice requirement in the state of Missouri. I don't believe that was ever effective. And we debated this greatly throughout the moratorium, throughout the last year and a half.
Okay.
I was part of a working group with St. Louis County's presiding judge, myself, two of the other big eviction attorneys, as well as a bunch of the tenant advocate attorneys, such as Arch City Defenders, Legal Services Eastern Missouri, and the EHOC, Equal Housing Opportunity Commission. Those are fine lawyers on the other side. They're good people. So we all had these monthly meetings that were set up by presiding Judge Burton of the St. Louis County. And some of the discussions back last summer were centered around this whole notice requirement. And I think I effectively argued, and I'm pretty sure that the judges agreed, that there is no notice requirement in Missouri. We don't have to give notice. The 30-day thing was of questionable validity in Missouri. Basically, we didn't file evictions if there was a mortgage on the property during the CARES Act.
Okay.
We restarted.
But that's over. It ended.
It ended
a year ago.
July. Let's call it August 29th.
Okay.
To be safe. 2020. It's a year old. It's expired. It's over. The federal government, Congress, has not extended the CARES Act ever. That moratorium, Section 4024 of the CARES Act, has never been extended by any executive order or act of Congress. What they did then, let's fast forward to, I believe it was in September, the CDC did the CDC moratorium. Now,
and that's a federal thing, right?
Yeah, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control,
sure,
part of the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, let's just aerial.
Keep it high level. Yep.
High level view. The Department of Health and Human Services is unconstitutional, just like Department of Education, just like much of what our federal government does. We have a government of limited powers. 9th and 10th Amendment, which are never discussed, basically say if it's not specifically listed in here as a power of the federal government, the power resides with the several states or the people. Now, that fight was lost long ago when, Jimmy Carter instituted the Department of Education in the waning days of the Carter administration. One of the promises broken by President Reagan, a great man. I hate to say anything negative about Reagan. The fact is he ran on this idea of one of the promises he made was he was going to get rid of that last minute lame duck act of Carter creating the Department of Education, and he didn't. It was never discussed again. all these departments that have no real relation to federal powers are illegal.
So what did the CDC do? Let's bring it back to that.
So the CDC said the spread, they have power to enforce things that will prevent spread of disease. And
they're basically a vaccine
getting
company,
evicted,
right?
Well, they're
basically
they research disease.
They own all the patents on the vaccines.
No, they don't own the patents that Pfizer and Monsanto own. Whoever it is, not Monsanto, Pfizer.
Not those two. I'm talking about all the other ones that you get at birth and shit. They own all those patents.
Many of those patents are even expired. They're all
right.
Open source now.
That's true. That's true. But they had them at one point, right?
I don't know that the CDC owns these things. Companies own them. But the CDC is a governmental entity, a federal entity that's part of HHS that oversees and funds
World Health outbreaks.
Disease.
I mean, that's what we had.
Right.
So
we had a health outbreak. So do they have the
CARES
power?
Act ended, and then the CDC does what? What do they do?
The CDC comes in and says, because the COVID is so deadly
and widespread,
and people are in danger of eviction, and eviction means going either to relatives' houses, friends' houses, or into to shelters or on the street in crowded circumstances, the disease could spread. And until everybody's vaccinated, we got to stop that. Now, maybe their intentions were good. We all know what the road to hell is paved with. But even if their intentions were good, they don't have this power. Okay. This was recently agreed to by the Supreme Court in a vague
so that started,
decision.
you said a couple months there. So you said basically like September, October, doesn't
and then
matter.
It was, well, September, October, and it expired December 31.
So that was just another short-term thing then.
Correct.
You're talking
and then it was extended.
Two months each time, essentially.
And then it was extended, and then it was extended, and then it was extended, and then it expired July 31.
Of this year.
Which
is about a month and a half ago.
Right. And then by the time...
Or no, not even. That's
half a month ago.
2 weeks ago.
And then by the time this got through the courts, finally, at the beginning of July, less than a month to go on the CDC moratorium, it reaches the United States Supreme Court. Now it had been deemed unconstitutional in the Sixth Circuit in the Federal District Court of Eastern Tennessee, and then brought up to the Sixth Circuit there. And they said the CDC moratorium is unconstitutional. It's stricken, but it was only effective for the Sixth Circuit. It was deemed unconstitutional in Northern District of Texas. It was deemed unconstitutional in Eastern or Southern District of Ohio, and deemed unconstitutional elsewhere. And then in the Alabama Realtors case, which was brought in the District of Columbia Federal District Court, Judge, what's her name? Dabney Friedrich. This is the one that made it to the Supreme Court. She says it's unconstitutional and it's stricken. And then 3 hours later, presumably after somebody put a gun to her children's head. I mean, yes, I sound like a crazy person, but I believe somebody put a gun to her kid's head and said, you have to stay this or else we'll have you shot. I put nothing past our current government.
Yeah. Somebody got to her.
Somebody
most
got
likely,
to her. Just like
and 3 hours later, she did reverse.
She didn't reverse herself. She stayed
as the plaintiff.
She is the judge.
Oh, this is the judge. I'm sorry.
This is the judge.
Okay.
Judge says the CDC moratorium is unconstitutional and it must be strict.
And then she immediately reverses her.
She doesn't reverse herself. She says,
I got it.
Implementation is stayed pending appellate
So pending
review.
Something else.
So then it goes up to
there's a contingency added to it.
Then it goes up to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where a lot of cases kind of go fast track to the Supreme Court. DC Circuit Court of Appeals is a left-leaning court, of course, says that's a bad decision and we're continuing the stay. It's going up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court punted. Justice Kavanaugh wrote, it should have been 5-4, but Justice Kavanaugh does not have the courage of his convictions. He said it's unconstitutional, and he agrees with Dabney Friedrich. He agrees with the trial level court, but there's less than 30 days. Let's just let it run out. But you can't go past July 31st.
So everybody, there's like so many people that are involved in this.
Yeah. So
that's why it's dragging on, because it's like so when you try to explain this to somebody, it's like it's not something that you can just tell them in a two or three paragraph text message, because there's like 10 different things that are pulling on it, and the different decisions, and different people are getting involved and screwing this process up.
The law
yeah, just complex. Politics in general is complex and shady, and the law is complex too. Right.
And shady. I mean,
In a
look,
way, right.
we live in a country that relies on rule of law, but there really is no more rule of law. Rule of law is gone. We don't live in a country where the ultimate law is the Constitution. We don't. Anybody who believes that we still do,
It's muddy now. It's
not
so
muddy.
muddy. Oh,
There is-
man.
the Constitution has been abandoned by judges,
Right. Oh, really?
I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's arguable, but you know that I
Right.
don't want to get too into the weeds. But I will quote exactly what Justice Kavanaugh said in that muddied
Let's hear it.
decisions. One sentence, quote, "In my view, clear and specific congressional authorization via new legislation would be necessary for the CDC to extend the moratorium past July 31st." Unquote. Justice
So,
Kavanaugh.
but by saying that, they basically allowed the first one.
They allowed the
too.
first one to end.
So they
on July
confirm
31st.
it. They confirmed that it was legal to begin with, too.
No. He said it was. He said in other language. He said this is really problematic, but we're gonna let it.
It's already
run its
going.
course 'cause
Got
it's
it.
almost over.
Okay.
Basically, to simplify.
So that's
things,
2 weeks ago. Are we back to business now or what?
So after 31st, it was over.
Okay.
We started flooding the sheriffs with a bunch of executions that had been held because people had shown the CDC declaration, et cetera. Now, in order for that moratorium to be effective, tenants have to sign a declaration under penalty of perjury, which says specific things. And it's almost always
So
a
they're
lie.
agreeing.
They're stating that they were detrimentally affected by specifically the COVID.
And it's always a lie. But
It's
they're
almost always a lie.
okay.
That they've been making their best efforts to make regular monthly payments. I'd say in the ones I've seen, over 90% are provably lies. We ended up challenging many of these in
Holy
court.
cow.
We've ended up
Hol-
challenging many of these.
Over 90% are
Yeah.
lies?
And
Really?
we've gotten dozens upon dozens of these. We only had time to litigate, to make motion hearings, to challenge these CDC declarations in about 25 or 30 cases. And we had about a 2/3 success rate convincing the court that they should be stricken. And we were able to do that. And it was so shockingly, even the ones we lost, I'd say about half of them, I really truly believe the judge was just feeling sorry for these people.
He's probably
because-
getting flooded with them too, man.
Yes and no. I mean, the judges are so backed up. We have very backed up courts now, and I'll get back to kind of how things work now.
Yeah, sure.
But one of the reasons we're very backed up now in St. Louis County is because of the long halt in court activity.
Is there an eviction court that's specific
No.
to that? Or is it just
So the
all
courts in Missouri, there's circuit court judges who are kind of like the higher level trial judges.
Okay.
The ones have been associate circuit for a while. They get promoted
Okay.
to circuit judges. Then there's the associate circuit court judges, and there's different dockets. So there's the criminal docket, there's the family law docket, and there's what's called.
So does one judge just work one docket, or will one judge see all of the stuff?
It depends on the county, but generally, where our cases are in with one judge on a particular day of the week, and that docket is designated as an associate bulk docket.
Got it.
There's two types of cases that would be heard. There's generally that I've seen, about 1/3 of the cases are evictions, and about 2/3 are collections cases.
Okay.
So your small credit
And
card
where does the
cases,
wrongful, what's it called? You know this.
like wrongful termination.
No.
wrongful death.
So the opposite, like not the opposite, but like the other option to evicting somebody.
Unlawful
is to,
detainers are all landlord cases.
okay.
all the,
So it's all that'll file
landlord
unlawful
cases,
detainers. Is what I was
all
getting at.
landlord
Yeah.
cases will be in the associate circuit.
Got it.
court.
Okay.
And basically these dockets are always crowded. The number of collections cases that appear in court is much fewer.
2/3 usually though. Collections versus 1/3.
Yeah, that's pretty much normal.
But I guess that makes sense though. That
there are a lot more collection.
They're in the system at that point, and
Yeah.
they're just kind of working their way through it.
Exactly. And now those
Yeah.
cases tend to be more continuances, even in normal times.
Sure.
Because there's no urgency to a
Right.
case for MSD. There's no urgency to a credit card case.
Right.
And in any case, that's what the dockets look like.
Mhm.
Generally, these dockets can handle, usually there's one bulk filer in each courtroom on a particular day of the week. So I'm in Division 41 on Thursdays. This attorney might be in Division 32 on Wednesdays, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in St. Louis County, we are the largest county in the state of Missouri. There were, until July 1st, 6 judges handling these bulk dockets. But because so many family law cases and criminal cases were pushed off, and just nothing happened on them for the last year, they decreased from 6 to 5 as we have a flood of new eviction cases coming in.
So they did that to catch up on the other side.
Correct.
And now we're getting
more of a mess.
Yeah, and that's just
so
that's just nature of chaos. Basically,
it's the nature of the chaos because this is the most dangerous disease ever in the history
of diseases, right?
This
unbelievable.
Now, how many people do you know who died of the COVID?
Personally, 0. I mean, I actually
wait, but you know many people who were laid up in the hospital on death's door, right? Especially young people.
No, a few
young people.
No, not next to death's door. I know a few people who have lost somebody, but I'm talking like maybe 2 people. So that's like,
so basically the number of people you normally know.
So out of my entire network, which is probably 2,000 or 3,000 people, and then the people they know,
right,
which is another 1,000 people each. So you're talking out of a 50,000 radius, maybe 2 or 3 people. Yeah, that's
right.
Pretty,
so that would be,
and that many traffic deaths happen in St. Louis every day, probably, right?
No, there's no traffic.
People
don't die in normal times.
Right.
This is the first year that people die, right? This is the zombie apocalypse. This is the end of the world as we know it. I won't sing it. Don't worry. I mean, it's absurd.
Right.
Actuaries guess. They don't guess. Actuaries are like magicians. I mean, that's why insurance companies.
Oh, they're making very, very educated guesses, but it's guess at the end of the day.
They know exactly how many people are going to die.
Yeah, the statistics are changing all the time.
How many will die by car accident? How many will die cancer, et cetera, et cetera. They know almost, within, a large number of significant figures. They know. And guess what? We not only didn't have a 500,000 people die increase in the number of deaths, we actually had a decrease in the number of deaths over the actuarial predictions. That's fact. The COVID did not kill 500,000 people. Anybody who believes that is frankly watching too much CNN. Not going to get deep into that. So let's fast forward. During COVID times, we don't have to get too deeply into it, but during 2020, the summer, the fall, winter, people were stopping. They weren't filing. A lot of things are just basically on hold, because even if we filed an eviction, normally we'd be in court and then we get the sheriff to kick them out. Sheriffs had a complete cessation of sheriff executions in St. Louis County until April of this year. So we didn't have a single sheriff execution until April. They were terrified the sheriffs were going to die. Now, in all fairness, one of the sheriffs died in March or April of 2020 of COVID. He didn't catch it at work, maybe because work had been shut down, or maybe he did. Who knows? But he was over 60. He was extremely overweight, and I believe diabetic. He was not a healthy man. What happens to overweight, diabetic old people?
Yeah, even if they get the flu, they could die. Right?
They get a cold, they die.
Yeah.
Death happens. Again, this is not an unusually high death year. It is normal. The 500,000 dead number is only arrived at if you believe that there were virtually no heart disease deaths and virtually no emphysema deaths and other types of normal.
People die all the time of everything. Right.
And it's sad, but people die. Death is part of life. So right now, I tell people we can get to court normal time frame in St. Louis City, St. Charles County.
So it's been 2 weeks since this thing ended. Have you presented?
There's a new one. Okay, so
have you not presented to the judge with your clients' cases yet?
So, well, we're going into court. The whole CDC moratorium only applies to the sheriff's execution at the very end of the process. The sheriff physically going and putting them out.
So you've been able to go to court this whole time and get them to approve an eviction, which
like September,
which is basically just winning
a piece of paper.
Which is a piece of paper winning the fact that they've basically didn't hold up their obligation to the agreement.
Correct.
That's the simplest way to word it, right?
Correct.
And
then they still.
So you've won, but you can't do anything to enforce the fact that you've won. So
the reason for that was because they were terrified that the sheriffs would die. Now we advocated.
And this clarifies a lot for me. Yeah, I'm learning a ton here. Okay, this is great.
So we advocated and pushed hard in those monthly meetings to say.
And there was sheriffs dying all over the country, right? Like just everywhere. Anytime a sheriff would go in, they'd die.
Again, I will mention again, my wife, I love her. Thank you. She's out there. She is a dentist. She works in an aerosol field.
Yeah,
of
sure.
Grossness. Do you know shockingly, there was no die-off of dentists?
Yeah, you would think that would be because I just
there was no story.
I went the other day to a dentist to get my teeth cleaned. My dentist, right? And I was actually like, wow, this is probably the most in your face, in your mouth,
Yeah,
literally.
it's the dirtiest part of your body.
Right,
I think
right.
it's
Like,
the only thing dirtier.
and there's no increase in dentists dying,
no,
basically.
none. There was no.
And you
die
can't
off
get
of
any closer to
dentists.
that unless you're a prostitute, basically. You know what I'm saying?
I think the only thing, actually, I think the only thing worse than dentistry is
in terms of being
exposed,
Right,
I think
right.
would be like a trauma surgery.
Right. That's
Okay,
it.
like you know.
Yeah, because you have a lot of. Yeah,
and my knowledge of trauma surgery
similar,
is entirely informed by watching House and Scrubs.
Right.
So
it is.
you know,
Yeah.
But here's the deal: there was no die off of dentists. If this was as bad as they say, before they instituted all these rules, dentists would have all caught it and all.
Or they all would have quit. Yeah, exactly. Right. And they're all in business still. Yeah, I get it. And they haven't died. Right.
They have not. Shockingly.
So
maybe it's not as bad. But so we're now in 2021. We have a lot of cases that are still waiting to get the sheriffs. And then in July 31st, it expired. Justice Kavanaugh's decision is clear. It can't go past July 31st, requires an act of Congress. So the dementia.
So how long have you been evicting? I got to interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
How long have you been helping clients evict their tenants that are not paying? Hold on. That haven't been able to get them out with the sheriffs. I mean, like, what's the longest case?
I've got cases that are 15 months,
okay,
18 months.
So please continue. But hey, guys,
people
listening
with a $900 rent who owe $17,000.
Okay, there you go. That's where I'm going to get to. So people listening right now, listening and watching, still getting through this court process, but it doesn't mean
judgment since September.
But it doesn't mean anything, right? Okay.
Correct.
So I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's uncollectible and all that. Okay. So and
when you've gone back, when could you start going back? Or actually,
so in
tell
April,
us that process. Wasn't there Zoom stuff going on? Is that still happening?
We're in court since almost the whole time. We're in court.
In the person.
No, in Zoom and WebEx.
When did that start?
I mean, we were back in court in I guess August or September. Depending on the court. But we got to court. But again, we get judgments.
Of 2020, you're saying?
2020.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
So March, April, May, was it just closed? March, April, May, June? When did you get back to court?
So March and April.
Because March was like when everything shut down.
Everything shut down completely.
In March 2020, I think it was like the 12th or 15th.
And I don't even remember.
And I basically didn't leave my house for 2 weeks. I'm like, the world's going to end, everybody.
And
nothing was open.
We just went virtual. The courts are holding court, but it was chaos for a while.
So a couple months though, and then you're back in court.
But then we're back in court. Okay. We're getting judgments, but we still can't.
That's really good to know. I don't read the mile-long emails you send, brother. I love you, but that's a lot. And Megan, but here's the deal: I forwarded to Megan. She handles it. Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to forward it. She's on the list.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
But in any case, we're able. If they didn't hand in one of these CDC declarations, we've been able to evict since April in St. Louis County, a little earlier in St. Louis City. St. Louis City currently has its own.
April of 2021.
2021.
Okay. So there was a delay there.
There was a long time we couldn't do any
Oh, man. All right.
Because they shut down the sheriffs.
April, May, June, July, August. So we have four months, give or take, that we've been at it, but we can't get them out. And it's gone back as far as 15 months in certain scenarios.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Holy cow.
And people are taking advantage of it beyond belief.
Have the sheriffs done any short periods where they'd come back and then they retract?
And then they stop because they extend.
And how long were those little things? A couple days?
A couple of weeks there.
Man, yeah.
Now, in the county, we're still doing it. Every day we're kicking people out.
So has it started back?
Yeah, they've been back.
And when
St. Louis County, they've been back since April.
Okay,
but if people
show
the CDC declaration, it all stops.
Unbelievable. So everyone knows that then, of course.
Pretty much. So
they have to bring it to court to show it?
No, they have to show it to the sheriff, even last minute. They just say,
and then the sheriff can't do shit.
They can't do shit.
Unbelievable.
But then
you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's all insanity.
So when should that hopefully stop?
So it was supposed to stop July 31st.
Oh my God.
I read you what Justice Kavanaugh said, but then after that, Joe Biden even came out and said, "Look, I can't do anything. Congress has to act." Congress then went home. This is all at the very beginning of August, a couple of weeks ago. 2.5 weeks ago, Congress goes home, does nothing. Justice Kavanaugh's clear. Congress must extend. The dementia-addled puppet in the White House agreed and said, Congress must act. I can't do this. My legal advisors have said extending this would be constitutionally unenforceable. I think he said of dubious constitutionality, something to that effect. He clearly said it. He knows it.
So he knows the rules and the
He
law.
knows, and he knew
and
what
he was
happened.
telling
well,
the
his puppeteers knew.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. He doesn't know anything. That guy's
He's
an idiot.
gone.
Yeah.
But
he is gone.
I mean,
He's
he
like
was
a
an
dementia
idiot before the
patient.
dementia, but
Yeah.
now he's got dementia. But then 2 days later, Cori Bush sits in front of the House or the Senate building, and she's like sitting down. Our Congresswoman,
And this
part
is
of the
in
squad,
the federal or in the state Senate?
I think I don't remember where she went. Did she go
Okay.
to Jefferson City? I think she went to Congress,
Okay.
sat down in front of the building.
Mhm.
Now, this is a woman who ran on the principle that she was an evicted tenant. Whatever. I don't give a crap. She's a communist. She's a horrible, horrible congresswoman, and hates America. She's an anti-Semite. She's a Hamas supporter. She's a terrible person. But she goes and protests, and suddenly the puppet is directed to tell the CDC to put in a new moratorium. The new moratorium is almost identical to the old one. They acknowledge that Congress would have to act. Congress did not act. CDC does a new moratorium.
They do a new one.
New one.
When?
Like August 3rd.
So just so after the 31st of July.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days there. So there's a current one still.
Biden acknowledges it's unconstitutional to extend it, and he does a new one 3 days later. 60 days. Expires October 3rd.
Now I know why your emails are so juicy lately, man. Holy cow, because this is just
because I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I am
as an American
too.
citizen, I'm frustrated
This
that
had nothing to do-
our president says I am
Wow.
bound by the Supreme Court, and then 3 days later he violates the Supreme Court. People criticize Donald Trump as having been an authoritarian. There was no way, shape, or form he was authoritarian. That man was the most constitutionally purest president we have seen in our lifetime,
In a long time.
our parents' lifetime,
Yeah.
our grandparents' lifetime. Okay, my great-grandmother was born in 1900.
There's a lot of reasons to hate
You know,
him, but not for
there-
that. I agree. Yeah.
I mean,
And I don't hate him. I'm just saying there
I
are
don't-
people that have the
he's a
other
dick.
perspective.
that's the only thing you
Yeah.
could really say negative about the guy.
Right.
But he kept his promises and he adhered to the Constitution.
Right.
He clearly said, I can't do this. Congress must act. And he didn't.
Right. And then 3 days later,
Joe Biden says,
Or, yeah,
I can't
Joe-
do this. Congress must act. And then 3 days later, he does it. He does it unilaterally by CDC bureaucratic fiat. He does it again. That's illegal. It's unconstitutional. And frankly, it's impeachable. That is an impeachable offense. Having a phone call with the president of Ukraine, which was innocuous and frankly, yes, a perfect phone call, was legal and totally legal. Whereas this act of Joseph Biden was an impeachable offense. He violated the Supreme Court blatantly after publicly acknowledging the unconstitutionality.
man, there's got to be a lot of people that know this as well and share
half the country understands this.
Okay, so why doesn't anybody in power
Because much of the
stand
Republican
up
Party,
and do something about
because
this?
much of the Republican Party are actually part of the Uniparty. Again, I don't want to get too into the
Okay.
weeds, but we're talking Uniparty. The Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, whatever Biden was before the dementia, they're all part of the Uniparty. They are not Republican or Democrat. As a famous talk show
They just
host,
use that.
they call
yeah,
it
I
the
get
Republicrats
Mhm.
and the Democrats. They're all the same. What's that dude's name from the Bronx? I don't know. He lives in San Francisco. I can't remember his name, but crazy late night talk show guy. He used to call them the Republicrats and the Democrats.
I like it.
Because they're the same thing.
Right.
They are the Uniparty. They're the party of endless war. Look, we're getting back into endless war. Donald Trump got us out of it. He got the Taliban shut down. And look what's happening in Afghanistan. It's so bad that even CNN and MSNBC are saying, like, pretty much, holy shit, Biden has screwed the fucking pooch on this one. I mean, it's so bad. Kamala Harris was quoted as having said, you're not going to pin this shit on me. She would not make a public statement in any way, shape, or form dealing with the Afghanistan, considering the president's, again, back hiding in the basement. He's feeble. He's dementia-addled. He is a puppet. And the vice president has no spine. These people need to be deposed. They are usurpers. They committed a coup d'etat. That's all I'll say on that. I mean, look, this afternoon, I went off on an hour-long rant.
I get it. Yep.
On the stolen election. I'm not going to do that to you here. Let's get back to it. So now, where are we at now? Now I take you on as a new client, and basically I say, everything's just a shit show. We can get you to court in a normal time frame in the city. Instead of 30 days in the county, you're looking at closer to the 45 to 60 days for the first court date. expect a couple of delays. Instead of going to court and either getting on, 2 out of 50 cases, a trial setting or something else, and the other 48 are either going to be paid in full, dismissed, or consent. Figure 15 are just going to be continued. Why? Because they made applications for
Something.
the money,
Right.
mostly, the SAFER money, the CARES Act money, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of agency money out there. Now, let's say to the tenants out there and the landlords, if you want to get some of that government cheese, as they used to call it, there are billions of dollars available. Now, like many states, Missouri's been just terrible about the distribution of the money. Now, let me preface this. I am opposed to giving out money.
Yeah, me too.
The social welfare state is what's destroying this country.
Yeah, we just printed trillions of dollars.
We just printed trillions. But you go back to the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson. This was planned government dependency. We all know the quote. I will not say it on your show, but Lyndon Johnson knew exactly what he was doing.
You can say anything you want, man. What's the quote?
Well, when
don't drop too many F-bombs because we are live.
It's not an F-bomb.
Right? Okay.
It's an N-bomb.
Oh, you don't need to say
So
that. But yes,
we're going to have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 100 years. That is a direct quote of Lyndon Johnson, but he used the word. And I've never, I hate that.
That's not your stance. That's a quote. Okay,
Lyndon Johnson, President of the United States, who passed what's called the Great Society. That is the legislation which created the entire, the bulk of the social welfare state. Welfare, food stamps, all this stuff.
Okay.
The dependency of inner city blacks and Latinos and rural poor whites, the dependency, the generational dependency that was planned purposefully to have that effect by the Democrat Party in the 60s. That is the Great Society. What's happening now is they want more people dependent. They want everybody there. So we have more and more politicians now, be they elected politicians or those running for office. Now, these are the leftward Democrats, but don't forget all the parties have shifted left. The Republicans of today are basically Democrats of 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. The only ones who are true conservatives, your Rand Pauls, okay, your Josh Hawley, who I thought was kind of like an establishment Republican. God bless that man. Our best, only better senator here from Missouri, because Roy Blunt is a disgrace. He's part of the Uniparty. He voted for that abomination of a infrastructure bill, trillions more, to expand the social welfare state and the dream list of Democrat insanity, of communist insanity, Green New Deal stuff. I mean, it's all being snuck in there. And we had 17 or 19 rhinos, Republicans in name only, including Roy Blunt. And I'll put in my bid for our former excellent governor, Eric Greitens, is running for Senate, and I hope he wins. But Josh Hawley ran last time. I actually supported an opponent of his in the primary. I, of course, voted for him in the general, and he's turned out to be one of the best in the Senate. And my friend who ran against, I've discussed it with him, and he ran against Hawley in the primary, and he's like, yeah, he's doing good. He obviously no love lost there, was his opponent, but I think Greitens will be excellent. So we get back to the eviction. So what is happening now? I tell you, we can get into court in a normal time. We've got delays. We can get judgments.
But so you have delays. So a percentage of the cases that are getting to court are getting continued just because they can.
But if they are truly applying for SAFER money, you're going to get paid in full.
Okay, got it.
Once they get paid in full, the people who are
we went down this rabbit hole here because we were talking about both tenants and landlords getting
right. So
getting
assistance.
So let's finish that conversation.
So you want to get the assistance. Listen, even if you are fundamentally opposed to taking government money, as I am,
and we are, right? But
if everybody's taking it, you got to take it.
Right.
I'm sorry. You could stand
Oh no, it would
be
stupid for me to allow my share of the national debt to go up without getting some of that.
Absolutely,
100%.
Now keep
in
mind,
our property manager is getting some in certain cases right now.
Correct.
100%. Yeah,
we're
not going to hide behind that.
I will tell you, all of you landlords, it's very important with the SAFER applications.
Mm-hmm.
Now here I'm talking about Missouri. I'm talking about SAFER. I'm talking about the new ERAP program. St. Louis County calls
And tenants can get this stuff too, right?
Tenants have to make the initial application.
Right. And
Landlords
that's right.
have to
We
do
help
their
them.
portion.
We basically work together. So we're not, and that's another thing. We're not getting money, or are they? Because it's a teamwork, it's a partnership, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not getting it independently and then having, like, we're not beefing. You know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
you can't. Don't.
And that's the wrong
and that's
word.
something to watch out for. Don't let them.
That's such a terrible word, right?
Don't let them ask for more money than is owed.
Well, not only that, we're not threatening at the same time of working with them to throw them out.
You can't.
Yeah,
in fact, you're making an agreement.
Yeah, so that's my point that I'm trying to convey, though, is that it's a good thing in a way.
100%.
Yeah, not only is there money, we're both getting it.
Now keep in mind,
and we're keeping people in homes.
Exactly.
So it's good.
Now,
but it's all kind of weird at the same time.
It's very weird, and
I get
almost everybody who's receiving this assistance is not truly harmed by the COVID,
and that's an issue. There's always going to be fraud.
But everybody who's saying, you know, I lost my job during COVID. Oh, yeah. If you lost your job.
So right now it's 80% fraud probably. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. But yeah, there's always going to be some of that.
But
it sucks.
It sucks
There's a lot of it
American
going
to
on.
see that people who lost their job.
Maybe not 80%. That's crazy exaggeration.
No, it is not. It's not, because
but a lot of people. Yeah.
Even if it's job. If they were getting unemployment, they made more on unemployment than they made working.
Yeah, and is that still going on too? I know you're not an employment lawyer, but
the governor of Missouri ended the extra unemployment benefits. But there's so much assistance out there.
So there's a lot of angles where it's not just one thing that's happening to prevent and create a situation that puts somebody in a 15-month holding pattern.
Correct.
Right? Because it's very complicated. There's a lot of angles and a lot of things that are happening.
Correct.
You explained that awesome. This is cool. So right now,
we get to court. Now you can get to court.
The sheriffs doing their thing?
Now the sheriffs,
but they're still having the CDC thing.
St. Louis City is kind of a weird situation.
Okay.
There was a lawsuit by Arch City Defenders, and
who are they? Just an organization?
It's one of the tenant advocate firms out there. They do other stuff.
Is it it's a law firm, or
it's a law firm? It's a public interest, kind of a pro bono law firm.
Okay.
The attorney who filed that case and litigated it is a fine attorney. I've spoken to him personally several times over the last couple of weeks. Shout out Lee Camp. You did a good job, but still, man, holy cow, the shutdown in the sheriff's office in the city is partially a result of that litigation, but also partially a result of the presiding judge in the city making a decision to be
again multiple angles.
But
the
end result is that we can't evict normal non-payment of rent cases. In the city, we still can evict commercial tenants. We can still evict for the cases that are not non-payment of rent. So if we file emergency evictions because there's guns and drugs or massive property damage, we can do that. Give us a call. We can do it.
I'm going to screw this up again. Yeah. Unlawful detainer.
What
is that? Is that not an eviction? It's different.
It is an eviction.
Or it's part of it.
It's
a type of eviction.
Part of it. It's type of it. Basically, when I normally say to a new client is there's several kinds of lawsuits that can be filed.
Okay.
We can file.
That's essentially what's happening whenever we do an eviction, right?
Correct. Now, in general, we file two kinds. There's a rent and possession, which is basically I want my rent, I want possession.
Yeah.
We're not. We're not discussing your breaches of the lease.
You're in breach, right?
Yeah,
right.
maybe, but we're not discussing the extra tenants you have there. We're not discussing whether you're tearing the place up. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But all we're talking about is late rent and regular ledger items.
Keep it simple, right?
Rent, utilities, late fees, legal fees, and if you come to court or before court, you pay in full. We dismiss the case.
Okay.
We start over again. Now, if you say to me, man, I got to get rid of this guy. There's other issues going on. Number one, I terminated him and he overstayed the termination. Number two, I non-renewed him and he overstayed the termination. Number three, he's breaching the lease in all sorts of ways. So we terminate. And those would be an unlawful detainer. Then there's a more serious situation, which we call 441s, because that's just the section of the law.
Sure.
So we call it it's basically an emergency eviction. If we have property.
You mentioned that. So drugs or
guns and drugs, multiple police calls. I had one yesterday that we started 67 police calls.
That many. How are they still there?
Just a few months.
How are they still there?
Because the police aren't actually arresting anybody.
Unbelievable.
If they arrest them, they let them out later that night.
So they just go right back home.
This one is in St. Louis City. In St. Louis City, the prosecutor of St. Louis City, a woman named Kim Gardner, is one of the George Soros plant prosecuting attorneys that he's planted in cities and jurisdictions all over the country. This is one of his big pushes. He spent millions, probably tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars installing basically leftist activist
that
DAs
into positions that have
into positions
into
of
positions
prosecuting
that
attorney.
that their job swings. Their job's a very small hinge that swings a big ass door.
Absolutely, that's a great.
Is that
way
a great
to put it.
metaphor for
Great
that?
way to put it.
Okay,
so that's why
so they
in St.
decide
Louis,
not to work or not to do certain things.
Well, if they
and
decide
that
to commit
door
crimes,
is not in the right position.
Right now, St. Louis is one of those cities where there's a massive increase in crime, and I know many St. Louis Metro Police Department officers. I'll give a shout out to all those St. Louis Metro guys.
Absolutely,
you do as awesome a job as you're allowed to, but you all know that many of the SLMPD cops are on a blacklist of Kim Gardner's. She will not
prosecute their
any cases from certain cops. She will not prosecute. Throughout the Summer of Love, all the rioting, which St. Louis was one of those cities where there was rioting, arson, murder. The murder case was prosecuted. And then the McCoskeys, those two idiots.
And then they stopped prosecuting those two,
they got pardoned by the governor.
Sure. I saw it the other day. Yep.
But the McCloskeys are.
He's running for Senate too, or something.
He's an idiot.
Neither here nor there.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I have really no opinion.
Yeah. Let's move on.
But Kim Gardner prosecuted no other cases. All the arson, all the property destruction.
None of that was prosecuted.
They prosecuted nobody.
They just dropped the cases or just refused to.
So.
Wow.
Even when people are arrested for doing really bad things, I mean, we have shootings every week. One of my properties has a shooting, has an attack on a property manager. They come into their office, they attack them. These people are let out of jail almost immediately. Now, in cities like New York, there's no cash bail anymore. Everybody is let out. In Missouri, we used to be pretty tough on crime, even in the city.
Yeah.
Even in St. Louis City, even if you're an attorney, I'm a defense attorney, I've got a defendant, and I get, a mostly black jury, that doesn't mean they're going to give them a pass. Missourians tend to be pretty conservative. They tend to be pretty law and order.
Yeah, they intend to be pretty rational.
Pretty rational.
Doesn't matter what side you're on
it doesn't
or
matter
the color
of those jurors. They're going to hold a murderer guilty.
Rational understanding of right and wrong. Right.
Absolutely. We are in the Midwest. You got rational conservative people here, but we have this prosecuting attorney. So getting back to the eviction. So, property managers in the city have all this craziness going on. What are we going to do? And the cops are going to constantly say to you, sorry, sir, sorry, ma'am, that's a civil matter. We can't do anything. You could arrest him, but he's going to be let out, and you can't toss the stuff on the street. And the property managers know it. So what do we got to do? We could file a 441. We could get them out in a couple of weeks with a 441. It's more expensive.
What is the 441? Define that.
That's just basically an emergency
simple term.
eviction.
So that's what that is. We're talking about
the
now.
Emergency
Got
eviction.
it. Okay.
So, but in general, most of our evictions and everything we're talking about with the moratoriums pertains to late rent evictions, your regular evictions. That's what most of these cases are. Most people who are late on their rent are not tearing up the place. Most landlords, if they get the rent, they'll let them stay. They're fine. Whatever. Now I get some landlords who are like, these guys are always late. We don't want to keep them. Fine. But a lot of those people, when we get to court, we do consent judgments that say, okay, I'll vacate on September 30th. I'll pay you this much on September 1st. I'll pay the balance when I leave, or we'll just have a judgment for the rest when you leave. But they owe tons of money, and landlords are going to be writing off $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 judgments. They're never going to be collected because most of these people are uncollectible. Because that's what the federal government said when they did the CDC moratorium the first time. And then when they renewed it, they said, well, hey, we're not harming you landlords. You could still get a judgment for money. Great. So what do you do with all those judgments? How many of those judgments do you ever collect on?
Oh man, so we have a guy.
We had on a good day.
Check this out. We had a guy and he got us no money.
Right.
And then we fired him or just basically quit bringing our cases to him and got another guy. And he brought us one or two. This is over 7 years, by the way. Yeah. He brought us one or two. And then we got a new guy that we met at REIA, and I don't think he's got any yet. He's newer.
Right.
So you're talking in 3 years, maybe 2 or 3 people.
Right.
And here's the thing. I'm blessed to not have to go after people for money a lot. So the amount of times that we've even had to have do that are probably, 10 times. So I'm basically at 20%, call it.
Yeah.
Which is probably pretty standard.
Pretty standard.
Right.
Listen, in the world,
and it doesn't mean that they paid in full either. It just means we got something.
It means you garnish,
and oftentimes we'll just
$800 on a $15,000 thing.
Right.
The fact is that it's the worst crap of the collections world.
Mm.
Okay. The guy that I generally send clients to, which
it is the worst. It's the lowest. It's somebody couldn't pay for their roof.
Right.
So if that's the case, then they're probably having other issues in their life.
Right.
It's not like they defaulted on a $200,000 boat.
Right.
Or something like that, where like
those guys
you had the money at some point to do something like that.
Right.
You're gonna figure it out.
And
they don't want the judgment because they're getting other boats and others.
Right.
Yeah.
And the guy with the boat's got a real job.
It's a different level. Yes, of course. Right.
And he wants to. He doesn't want to lose everything.
Right.
So this is the worst of the worst. You're not going to collect on it. So the government knows but doesn't care. Now, keep in mind, people in government. I mean, and everybody out there,
nobody would probably be
nobody should ever vote. Nobody should ever vote for legislators and in particular executives, meaning governors, mayors, and presidents. Nobody should vote for somebody for those offices unless that candidate has private sector business experience, unless he had to meet a payroll.
Yeah, I agree 100%. How are you going to work a budget when you've never had any experience running a budget?
Like, spend your life in quote unquote public service. You know, no denigration of Joe Biden's military service. And then after that, he's been in Congress ever since, and then vice president. So he's been in public service his whole life. And I will not put air quotes around his military service. I don't know what he did in the military. I'm just going to assume he was excellent in the military. But what I will say is he did nothing in the private sector ever. Now, his family did. That's a different story. That gets into the weeds. But I remember when there was the election for Obama against McCain.
Okay.
Now, I'm no fan of John McCain. And
so this is in 08, right?
This is, 08.
Basically 07, 08. Yeah,
but I remember describing the election and said, listen, you got one lawyer married to another lawyer. The vice presidential candidate is, I don't think Biden's a lawyer, is a lifelong politician, literally. That's the Obama Biden ticket, no private sector experience in the lot of them. None of them. Running against McCain, Palin. McCain, also lifelong government guy. No private sector experience, but at least in his family. His wife owns one of the biggest beer distributors in the country.
Yeah, so some of these people have it.
So at least in his home, McCain understands business.
Right, but most of them don't.
Most of them don't.
Most of them don't.
Palin. What did we have with Palin? We had executive experience in government, mayor and governor, and we've got private sector experience. The family owns a fishing company, a commercial fishing company, and her husband not only worked in the commercial fishing company, but he's worked in the oil industry, private industry. That family understands. Palin personally understood business.
Yeah,
meaning
business
a
101.
Budget.
Right.
Okay. Whatever you want to say, don't talk to me silliness about Sarah Palin. That woman is an impressive woman. And did great stuff for her state, and would have been an excellent vice president, excellent president if something had happened to McCain. It didn't happen. It was bound not to happen. I mean, Obama was going to happen. When he ran against Romney, I held my nose. Romney has private sector experience, but he bothered me in a lot of ways. I didn't know why until Trump came in and Romney showed his true colors. But at least Romney had private sector experience. Now, granted, he was a what's it called? A vulture capitalist. Some people denigrate venture capital. I'm going to denigrate it right here, because all that man ever did in private business, at least he had to meet a budget.
Yeah, at least he had to meet a budget, though, right?
Basically, he took businesses, broke them up, and outsourced it to other countries. Mitt Romney, you're a jackass, and you never did anything good for America outside of the Olympics. Maybe you did good for the state of Massachusetts. Right. I don't know. I've never lived in Mass. I know nothing about your governorship, but your business career was one of making profit for your shareholders, which is important.
Wrap it up.
Okay, that's it.
All I'm going to say is this.
Yeah,
I love it because you are reinforcing the fact that it's coming from all angles.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's really crazy.
It is.
So when do we expect the sheriffs to get back to work? They're back already, but it's slow.
St. Louis City with that lawsuit. I'm just going to say things are in flux on a daily basis. I'm getting one answer and the other. don't know. In St. Louis County, St. Charles County, everywhere else, we're doing sheriff executions.
So
as long as they don't show the CDC declaration, we've been doing it.
So that's the issue.
We've been
now.
doing it, right?
Right.
So the CDC
does that declaration have an ending thing? Or no?
Well, currently it's October 3rd.
So okay. So
are we going to be going back and doing?
So if people know, if they know how to play the game, basically,
and some do,
and it seems like more and more are learning every day.
Absolutely. Now keep in mind,
it's slowing this process down. So people that have this 15-month back hold at this point, some of these people are starting to get their properties back. Maybe not money.
We're not money,
but possessions are starting to switch sides again.
Even gigantic balances.
And we've only been back at this for a couple of weeks, though, right?
Right. And now some of those gigantic balances are even being paid in full or in large part, by the safer money, by these CARES Act money.
Okay.
So those billions of dollars are starting to
flow.
Yeah. And I've got clients. Every day I get some requests to dismiss cases. And I get a little note with it. I don't have to have a note. So there's other cases that there's no note, but some of my clients put a little message on my system saying, received safer funds, please dismiss, please file a satisfaction of judgment if we already have a judgment.
So now I'd like basically, clients that get something figured out along the way are responsible, and they tell you, and then you don't waste time in the court.
Correct.
Which is great.
They have an obligation. If
they have an obligation too, right? Okay, perfect.
So if they don't dismiss it, we go to court. They come in, they say, hey, your client got all this safer money. We say, hold on, judge, let's put it on second call. I text them right from court. Boom, we get it, dismissing the case. I would like to put a plug. One of the things that differentiates the way I run an eviction practice, it's vastly different from every other lawyer, certainly in St. Louis. And I would say in the entire country, we built a custom web portal called ChaseNet.
Oh, it's neat. I've been in there a few times.
Is unlike anything in the country. There is nothing like this. It makes the filing of evictions with our firm much easier. Filing, tracking, follow-up, asking for writs. It's all in one place. It saves our property managers 2/3 of the time that they would spend with any other attorney. Now, there is one attorney named Brian Bargenbrook, who's out in Kansas City, who's been using our system for about a year. We're in the midst of upgrading it, and we're able to go into other states now.
So if somebody is an eviction attorney and they want to use your system, please plug it. Yeah. How do you?
So
you want them to call you or email you?
Call me or email me.
So we did drop a website.
So the website's on there.
ChaseLawPC.com.
Okay,
perfect.
And my email is Matthew, MATTHEW @ChaseLawPC.com. The best way to get a hold of me is call my cell. My personal cell is 314-757-4861.
Matthew, I spelled that right at Chase Law PC.
I can't see from here.
Yeah, I got it. Yep.
Okay.
And then what's the number?
314-757-4861. So we are starting to right before COVID. It's so frustrating. Our web developers were working with a firm in Connecticut, a firm in Illinois, a firm in Indiana, getting their specs done because every state has different laws.
So you have to tweak it.
So this is customized for every state. All that stuff stopped because in all those states, we haven't even heard the guys in Connecticut. We can't even find them. Maybe they're out of business. I don't know, because Connecticut, my understanding is all evictions have stopped. I don't know if that firm's still in business doing other kind of law. I don't know. They didn't do exclusively evictions, but that was large part of their practice. So I hope all is well with them. I've got an attorney here in St. Louis that's going to be opening up an office across the river in Illinois and doing ChaseNet in Illinois.
Nice.
In the southern part of Illinois. That, when we say across the river, we mean East Alton and
sure, of course. But in Illinois courts, though.
In Illinois courts,
yeah,
yes, sir.
right,
yes,
right.
Sir. So we're going to be able to do that. It's a vastly different experience. So I did want to kind of put that plug.
No, absolutely. I definitely want to do that.
Hopefully, as we get back, there's going to be a several month period till the end of the year where there's just chaos central. Until we're back in the courthouse with no more WebEx. Everything takes longer.
So when did WebEx start?
So they started with Zoom, and then due to some government contract with the state of Missouri and Cisco, they forced WebEx. WebEx is not as good.
And they probably claimed this is my security reasons.
It's literally the contract. They're required by contract, which I get. Hey, listen, it's contract. I'm a contract lawyer at base, but the problem. And this if anybody who works for Cisco is out there, why can't you guys have it work as well as Zoom? It's shit. WebEx is terrible. Nobody who uses WebEx is happy with it. And everybody who has experience, everybody in the world has used Zoom this year.
Great.
And WebEx sucks. People who phone in can't go into a breakout room. That's one of our biggest problems. If you only come in by phone, we can't put you in a breakout room. But the bandwidth problems, I don't understand it. Cisco and we're getting into the weeds. This is not politics. This is
so either way, they're using Cisco.
So they're using
WebEx.
Cisco.
And how long have they been using this? So I asked earlier though, when were you back in court? And you said that there was a couple months right after March of 2020.
Yeah, we got into
that you couldn't, but then you were back. So
wait, we did Zoom or WebEx since late summer of last year.
But so I thought you were, whenever I was asking that, you were saying we're back, that was referring to you actually going to the court.
No.
So when's the last time you went to court?
So St. Charles has been open for a few months now.
Okay.
And even to the point St. Charles, and shockingly, I have not seen dead bodies lying everywhere.
No, not at all.
We're not even required
to wear masks out at the court.
Masks.
That's
Don't
great.
Tell anybody.
Yeah, I like it.
But we don't wear masks in court. It's shocking to people here in St. Louis County, St. Louis City. We don't wear masks. St. Louis City courts are not officially open, and our docket
and this is 200 miles away, right? No, it's 10.
St. Charles is 10 minutes
10
away.
minutes away.
The way I drive is 10 minutes.
I know.
Supposed to be
I'm making a joke to emphasize to the listeners that aren't in St. Louis.
This is not rural Missouri.
No, not at all. It's right down the street. That's crazy. So, but you are still using WebEx, though, or no?
We're using it for St. Louis County. We must.
So you haven't been there in a year.
We just started in person for trials only.
Trials only, though.
Trials only. I went to my first trial.
It's all masked up and everything, probably.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's so
crazy.
stupid.
I said, the judge requires me to wear it in the courtroom, but then when I sat down at the desk, I was allowed to take it off. It's all insane.
It's insane. Yeah,
it's all meaningless. Just like I said down at Blues Stadium when I went to the thing. He's got 3-inch thick glass, the tiniest bit of airspace here to pass through stuff. If I was literally dying of Ebola there and spewing bodily fluids, dissolving inside like that movie The Rock. Escape from Alcatraz movie. Still he wouldn't have caught it, I don't think.
Unbelievable.
But people are brainwashed. That dude behind the glass was terrified without me having a mask on.
That's so crazy.
And he was wearing a cloth mask. I guarantee you that cloth mask has not been washed every 45 minutes, because you really have to change your mask every 45 minutes, is my understanding. Doctors, my wife changes those masks
all the time
for every patient.
Right.
But again.
So where are we headed? So we talked about where we were.
What we're headed to.
We talked about where we're at.
Big delays.
Where are we headed?
But getting back to semi-normal. What we don't have is we're not.
So you're back in the courts as of just a couple days ago, but that's just depending on where you're at.
Where you're at, but we're at least on. We're
so
getting
that's
judgments.
Normal.
We're getting judgments. We're able to execute unless they show the CDC. Now St. Louis City again, we're on a hold, but it's every week on, week off. We don't know what's happening. There are delays in St. Louis City. They have a stack of ours. If you've been filing with me and you look on the portal under writ requests, and if you see a bunch of your writs requests still sitting there and I haven't processed it, the reason I haven't is because those things have a kind of a ripeness. So they're only good for so long, and then they expire. We have to refile. So bear with us. When the sheriff tells me to start filing more, we'll file more.
Got it. That makes sense. That's smart. You don't want them to do it and then it's expired and they have to do it over again.
Exactly.
And then that also just creates a backlog in the system.
I have to spend
slows
my
down
time. The clerks have to spend their time.
There's multiple angles again.
The sheriffs have been scheduling and canceling and scheduling and canceling. So it's all kinds of chaos. But I will tell you, I have to give a shout out. The court clerks in St. Louis City, County, Jeffco, St. Charles, all these court clerks are awesome.
Good.
Thank you so much. They are doing their best.
They're working hard
very
right now.
Hard circumstances.
They are working really hard right now.
Whether they believe in the mask or not, I just joke with them about it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
They're working, right.
They are working their asses off. And let me tell you something, court clerks in Missouri are underpaid and overworked. So huge shout out to those court clerks. And all the ones I work with, are fabulous.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The judges are doing their best. My trial judges, Judge Higgins in St. Louis City, Judge Virginia Lay in St. Louis County. Thank you. You're doing your best.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're working within the rules that the presiding judges set up. Now, the presiding judges, I haven't had much nice to say for a long time, but I will tell you, we're hoping that things will change. We have a new presiding judge coming in St. Louis County. They're doing their best. St. Louis City's presiding judge, he is trying. I spoke with him last week. I kind of cornered him in the elevator and we chatted for a bit. And I know he's been personally named in that Arch City lawsuit. I don't know if it's personally, but he's a named defendant, and it's hard. You're dealing with all this stuff. It's hard. But the people I have my total anger and contempt for are our federal judges. This Circuit Court of Appeals. I know they're going to rule against the Alabama realtors. They shouldn't.
So what's that?
That's that case that
okay, gotcha.
That I talked about before,
right here,
where Justice Kavanaugh made that wishy-washy statement. It's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and I hope they just smack it down. But maybe they wait until October 2nd so they don't have to smack it down and actually end things. They're all being cautious because they want money to get out there. But the fact is, we are being held up across the board. And a lot of these people who aren't paying rent, don't forget, we started it. We got a judgment in September of last year for a rent and possession case. But then starting in February of this year, they started causing a ruckus. We've got this judgment we still haven't been able to execute on, and now they're causing a ruckus and the police are being called. So now we have to file a new lawsuit? What is this?
Yeah.
Why can't we? They should have been long gone. They should have been long
gone, right?
So you as the landlord have to just deal with the fact that I'm going to tell you, I will get these cases filed as fast as possible. I will be in court faster as possible. I will get sheriff's executions filed when and if I can and processed and through as fast as possible. But there's mass delays are the rule for the next 3 to 6 months. Will we ever get back to total normal? Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. But
the good news is that it's somewhat back to normal.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. And as of today, now things could change. I think we expressed this quite fully today, but there's a lot of angles, so things could change. And really, we should probably prepare for change. Like just basically accept it.
What we should prepare
because we've
for
seen so much of it over the last 18 months, basically.
What we have to prepare for is our federal government
15 months,
finding new reasons to extend lockdowns, mask mandates, and further impinge on our liberty.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody out there should be disobeying and defying mask mandates. Now, if you're sick, I used to live in Japan. I lived in Japan for about 3 years. I always giggled when people put on masks. But if they had a cold, they put on a mask. I remember once I had a cold, and my host mama, I was in a homestay.
She
gave me a mask to wear, and I wore it. Okay, I felt weird. It was hard to breathe, and I was sneezing, and so it's like it was disgusting.
Right.
She gave me a few, and she's like, "You're sick. You wear a mask." I mean, it's a kind thing to do for others if you're sick. But if you are sick, I just chatted with the guy at my local Starbucks this morning, and I had chatted with him before. He's immunocompromised. And I remembered that from the last time we chatted. He's like, I'm going to wear a mask no matter what. I'm immunocompromised. I said, I
get it, man. Yeah, totally.
Wear it.
But making me have to wear one. Yeah.
And if I know you're immunocompromised, I'm going to keep my distance from you. Because even if I don't know it, I can have some, but I'm not going to wear a mask.
Yeah, it's rationality.
It's rationality. And the fact is,
are you rational or are you not?
If you are severely immunocompromised.
But when it comes to taking away the rights and liberties for the most part.
Do we have a specific liberty to not be masked in public?
Well,
there's nothing written in the Constitution.
No, but
there's also no right of the government
to allow you to drive a car. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Similar. Yeah. There's no right of the government. Now, when you start getting into people congregating together, that's right there in our First Amendment.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. The right of the people to peaceably assemble shall not be infringed. Why do I tend most of the time to carry a gun? Not because I expect to be held up. I carry a gun because this is America and because I have that liberty. And if we give up that liberty, we run a big risk.
Yeah, it's not a right. It's a liberty. I like it.
It's a liberty. Yeah. It is a right.
It is a right too,
but it is not their right to say they shouldn't have to license you to carry a gun. That's why Missouri correctly, a few years ago, changed the law, and we are now what's called a constitutional carry state. Because what's my right to carry license? It's right there. It says 2A. The right of the people to keep, means own, and bear, that means carry, arms, shall not be infringed. Now, people, I'm not going to get into the whole preamble of, a well-regulated militia necessary to the, to the free state. Forget that. We're not getting into that. Study the founders, study the Second Amendment drafting. The well-regulated militia is all the able-bodied adults, males at the time was what was considered, but they never stopped women from carrying. The first gun control, those of you who believe in gun control and consider yourselves liberal, small l, remember where gun control started. The first real governmental gun control was the Weimar Republic. And then, when the Nazis came in, they made sure those Jews, my people, had no guns. Maybe it would have been different. Now, this was not a gun-toting culture. This was not, these weren't Texans or Missourians or Americans generally, so there was no gun culture, although many people hunted. But those who survived had guns. My wife's grandfather was a partisan during the war. One of the reasons he was allowed to join the partisans was because he had a rifle. They didn't have the ability to supply rifles to these. I mean, this gentleman was one winter, my understanding is, without shoes in the Polish forest or Lithuanian forest.
Right.
But he had a gun.
Right.
So
we have those. Yeah, we got those rights.
These are these liberties. If you give up your liberty for the sake of temporary security, you will get neither liberty nor security.
Right.
And you will deserve neither.
Man, that's a great way to word it. For temporary, right?
This has been Franklin.
Then you get neither.
I'm not making up.
No, I've heard. Yeah, I love this quote.
But
great quote.
You exercise your liberty, and when it comes down to it, if something happens in this country, it's no longer the North versus the South. It's not the East versus the West. It's not made up names in 1984. Where our main character was in there changing the historical records because they changed who they were fighting. And he was told to change all those historical records. That function now being fulfilled by Twitter CEO and Facebook CEO and Google, changing the search algorithm to make sure that they literally change knowledge and access to knowledge in a true Orwellian fashion by people who believe that Orwell is a manual for life as opposed to a warning that George Orwell intended it as.
Right.
So, we have to be cautious that we give up any of our liberty is a danger. But where are the lines drawn? If it comes down to it in this country, is it red versus blue? Is it urban versus everyone else? I don't know where the lines are drawn. What I do know is that one side's got all the guns and the other side doesn't know which bathroom to use. So,
let's wrap it up on that note. Guys, if you are looking for the best eviction attorney in St. Louis, check out Matthew Chase. You can reach Matthew directly at matthew@chaselawpc.com. You can check out all the information that he has on his website at Chase Law PC that will guide you through a lot of these things. Or you can connect with him directly. That's a cell phone, I'm assuming, or a business line. Giving out his cell phone. Look at this guy, man. That's awesome. 314-757-4861. If you are not looking to, or if you're looking for an eviction attorney outside of St. Louis, don't blow Matt up, guys. All right.
Yeah.
However, if you are an eviction attorney and you are looking to use Matt's kick-ass software that is streamlining the process and helping with the courts, helping the landlords, helping attorneys, connect with him as well. He's got a really good solution for you.
I will tell any attorney there that if you're doing a volume of at least 50 evictions a month, no matter what state you're in, and there'll be a time period to get it ramped up to get it sorted out, but you will save at least a salary.
Wow. That's awesome.
For sure. If you're doing it even remotely close to manually. Now everybody's got some sort of shortcuts, maybe some what's it called? Maybe some sort of practice management software that are out there for lawyers, but nothing's so
specific.
And this is built for evictions. It's flexible for every state's laws. As I said earlier on, we don't have a pre-eviction notice requirement, but it's built into the system. If you do, you can set that up. You could set the number of days. You could change the terminology. If you don't call it a writ, a sheriff's writ, if you call it something, whatever it is, it's not a petition. Here in Missouri, we call our lawsuit a petition.
Mm-hmm.
You guys might call it a complaint. Whatever it is, everything is flexible. So, but I appreciate the opportunity.
No, man, I'm glad you came on.
And thank you for keeping me on.
Oh, of course.
The path.
Yeah, I wasn't being rude, of course.
No,
yeah.
I go off.
Just keeping you on the path.
I go off on crazy tangents.
No, this is a good episode. We're at about an hour and 30, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And again, Matthew Chase has got a great practice. He's doing St. Louis City, St. Louis County, St. Charles County,
Jefferson County, and all the surrounding. We don't get many, but the further more distance, Warren and Lincoln County, we get in a very occasional case. I don't go there in person. I send their roaming attorneys.
But you can service those areas.
Absolutely.
And if you are an attorney, guys, he's got a really great product for you. We just broke down, if you're joining us later as well, we just broke down how it was and the reasons and the causes behind what's happening right now with all of these moratoriums. And I'm going to say that as a plural, right? Moratoriums.
Yeah, moratoriums.
Yeah, either way. And, where we were,
I never took Latin,
where we're at, and, essentially where we're going, guys. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
And we'll sign it off for today, guys. Catch us in the next episode.